Hello and welcome back to another episode of You Want to Do What. Today we've got Richard on, who is an MD at an integrated marketing company. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Daniel.
How are we today?
Very well, thank you very much. Yeah, very good here.
Yeah, so glad it's nearly the weekend, eh?
Yeah, it's my birthday next week, so I'm looking forward to a nice week off.
Oh, lovely. Any nice plans?
It looks as though we'll be able to actually go outside and enjoy a nice pub lunch outside, and hopefully the weather will hold up for it.
Yeah, lovely. Richard, do you want to jump straight in then? Let's talk about what you actually do.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Richard Boone. I'm managing director at an integrated marketing agency called Webmart. And we've been running 25 years, and I've worked at Webmart for 15 of those years. And so it's my job to lead the business across all of the departments, and also ensure that we deliver integrated marketing solutions. And that is, whether that's physical or digital marketing communications around different brands in retail and charity, and also around government bodies as well, to deliver on their marketing needs. So yeah, that's what I do.
So how did this all start then? What was there a love for marketing, or was it found through university or school, or what happened?
So I have quite a unique twist to my career at Webmart. Originally it was born out of finishing up at secondary school, and I had an opportunity to take one of the things I've been working on at school and pitch it at a mini Dragon's Den event. So I basically applied for this scheme that was based around sort of county councils coming together with various government schemes, and they put on a Dragon's Den with Peter Jones and Simon, who I work for at the moment, with various investors. And yeah, I had to pitch a business idea from school, basically.
How
So
cool.
yeah, so it was a bit of a strange twist, and obviously I was deciding to go to university at the time, and I pitched the idea, and I was successfully picked at the pitch to be able to meet up with the investors afterwards, and in doing so, had a good opportunity to get an interview working as a bit of a sort of apprentice for one of the investors, Simon. And that was the path that sort of got me into. I liked the look of the marketing agency and decided it was for me.
Wow. So you didn't really have sort of a knowledge of marketing before this. It was just something that had happened and you thought, I'm going to have a go at this.
Well, I had some experience. I would say what really helped influence me is I'd had a couple of work experiences, between the ages of sort of 14 and 18. I'd done a little bit of work experience around Oxfordshire, with various departments, and I've got a flavour for kind of what marketing departments stood for, and I felt like it might be a good fit for the type of person that I was, really, with creative ideas, and I like the feel of the industry. So yeah, I was kind of lucky that I had managed to meet someone that owned a marketing agency quite early on.
Yeah. So marketing's evolved obviously massively over the last few years. How has that affected what you do day to day in the business?
Yeah, so we've had a massive transition, really. I mean, to give you a bit of a flavour, so when I first started, I was part of a retail marketing team. And so my job was working with high street retailers. The high street was very, a predominant area of revenue for the business. And, online and e-commerce was sort of, founded, but it was still quite early days, and people were making their migration to that for businesses. And so I was opening up new stores. I was working with a lot of computer games companies, gaming retailers, and popular video rental stores and things like that. So obviously the high street was a huge part of what I would do day to day, and it was something that's evolved over time now to where we are today, where we're dealing with a broad mix of some high street retailers, and probably a bigger mix now of large e-commerce online brands, that are able to, sell a huge amount of products, a range of products, and deliver them to your door. And that concept 15 years ago was still quite early. So that's the biggest transition that I've seen, and day to day. Obviously that's had quite an impact on the evolution of the company. I've seen it from coming from sort of this sort of broker kind of model of where we would help clients source their needs, to today where it's, we're almost part of their marketing team, and we help facilitate the needs that are put on a marketing team to work across a broad mix of marketing channels. The variety that exists now online and offline. There's just so many disciplines to learn. You can't be a master of everything. So that's why we exist, really.
So in the world of marketing and advertising, it kind of all gets bunched together in most people's heads.
Yeah.
It's incredibly competitive, isn't it? There are literally thousands and thousands of agencies across the UK. How does one differentiate from the other, really?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, actually, because there's been a big shift in the size and shape of agencies based on sort of talent. And in a sort of pre-COVID world, there was a big shift to people wanting to split from big agencies and sort of become digital nomads and offer their skill set and their talents from their laptop, from anywhere, on their own as a freelancer, or maybe collaborating to make a small agency. So a lot of the sort of transition we've seen is from large agencies breaking down into specialisms, breaking down into making it more accessible for people to service a variety of sizes of clients from smaller teams. We've seen a huge amount of automation, where we've seen something that might be a dark art almost, and extremely profitable over a period of, say, 2-3 years, all of a sudden dry up and become quite commoditized, with much smaller agencies having access to similar powerful tools that are automated to compete with larger agencies. So we've seen a lot of that, and we've also seen a lot of in-housing, where brands have brought expertise in-house, rather than outsource to an agency. They've sort of brought a lot of that talent into their own marketing team, so that they can access it on tap. So yeah, it is a very competitive environment. It tends to sort of fluctuate, between in-house and outsourcing quite heavily, between the industry. And to differentiate, probably some of the biggest differentiators. We're 25 years old, right? So we've been long-standing through recessions and all sorts, and we've seen that evolution. I would say, from our perspective, and from my perspective, we've been able to sort of be agile and go with the times. We've been able to adapt the message and the way that we work with customers to be reasonably bespoke, and we've not had huge retainers. We've not had quite a rigid structure. So as they've required more or less of us, we've been able to sort of adjust it up and down on demand. And being flexible with the staff that we've got to offer that means that the variety of customers that we've got, we're offering sometimes a full service to one customer, whereas there's other customers that have only got specialist requirements, and therefore we only turn on that talent in that area.
Sure.
So that's kind of, I would say, how we've kind of weathered it. But in the industry, there's a huge variety of disciplines, and each of those have their own specialists as well. So it takes a little while to figure out what fits for you, and culturally, you have to get the right fit. You're going to work closely day to day, sometimes many hours a day with the same people. You've got to make sure you get that cultural fit, and you've got to make sure that you've got an agency that really understands where to take your brand, basically. So that's quite important too.
Is it fair to say, like you mentioned, over the last few years, a lot of the bigger agencies, people have left and started smaller agencies, medium-sized agencies, and now there's thousands of them. So is it fair to say that it's not necessarily an incredibly secure career if you're working in the small to medium-sized businesses? Because if they lose a big account, then that's a lot of revenue to that kind of size business.
Yeah, I think that's a fair observation for most of the industry. We've been quite unique in the sense that we've kept cash in the bank, and we've built a model that's quite sustainable. I think there has been some agencies that are set up that have sort of all their eggs in one basket, and that makes it quite risky. And if they don't diversify as well, or expect that customer's always going to want the same thing from them without adapting and stretching, then of course, yeah, it is risky. It's quite a lucrative industry. If you get it right, there's obviously huge marketing budgets that are being spent. But if you don't adapt and sort of follow the needs of the customer, and you only offer one thing, then of course that puts you highly at risk. And then you tend to see, this kind of dissipation of people sort of breaking off and creating their own ways to find ways to sell their unique skill set and talents. So it can probably feel quite unsecure for some people. It really depends on the model of the agency that they've set up and how they source their revenue. Do they have a strong way to secure new customers, or do they have a way to retain customers because customers are really happy to keep working with them over a long period of time? So yeah, I would agree with that.
So your journey from starting out in kind of an apprentice role to now being MD, how did that come about? What's the journey to get from apprentice to MD?
Yeah, I mean it's been a bit of a whirlwind. I mean, 15 years this year, so it's seen me move kind of from maybe something I learned quite early on, which was this sort of opportunity to try my hand at a few departments, and I found my home in the customer service key accounts team quite early, within the first 6 months. And off the back of solving a few problems for customers, that put me in a good place to firstly gel with the team around me, because they were struggling at the time with a few challenges on the account, and I made those go away. And then obviously I was able to then build some rapport with the customer, and become to progress my career over 3 or 4 years. And then I kind of from that point sort of made my way into more sort of mature account management, where I was looking after my own portfolio of accounts. Some of them I'd sort of generated out of getting recognized and referred, working with the same people. In marketing, people tend, just talked about, maybe the agency side. Within marketing as well, on the client side, there's a lot of people that move around between jobs. And that's a great way to progress your career. I've obviously done the opposite to that, and stayed and been able to get that variety within the business. But as people sort of move around, you're able to continue those relationships at new companies. So I kind of matured into this account manager and then account director, where I could manage a team. We would look after these variety of relationships I built over, my time of delivering on what they needed. And and then obviously, you get to a point of where, I moved over to the sales and marketing side. I really liked doing the marketing part of the job, so I wanted to build that into the role, and kind of help the business find more customers that would fit the culture. And then after a very successful year of doing that, and pushing some new ideas to kind of change and evolve the business to a more integrated marketing approach, with the vision of kind of where marketing was going, I kind of future-proofed the business to acquire more companies that believed in it, clients. And off the back of that, I was able to sort of negotiate a role around managing director, which gave me the opportunity to make sure the whole business had this same approach consistently from end to end. And thankfully, that's worked out really well, especially through some really difficult times as well.
So it's fair to say then, it sounds like it can be quite a good space for somebody who's quite entrepreneurial and likes to make change and push the industry forward.
Totally, yeah. I think if you're creative, or you like innovation, you like new ideas, you like change, I think marketing can really tick that box. And I think the progressions come through a mixture of being in the right place at the right time, but also creating my own luck as well. And I think applying yourself, if you're very entrepreneurial, that can get you quite far in marketing, because it's quite a varied discipline. You're talking about sales, you're talking about everything from the psychology of purchasing through to numbers and data. You're talking about creative. You're talking about budgets, spreadsheets, graphs. It really pulls upon many different disciplines, and so you kind of find yourself. I would say I'm probably a 50-50. I'm sort of part creative, part sort of lateral, kind of data-driven-y, focused. So I kind of have the sort of Hovis best of both is the way I look at it. But you do tend to find people tend to have, they play to a strength, and you get really uber creative, ultra creative people. You get really data driven people, and then you also get some very commercially driven people as well. So I would say if you're an entrepreneur, you tend to have a mixture of those, and I would say that works really well for progressing fast.
We had a digital marketing guy on quite a few weeks back now, and we were just talking about, like you say, the absolute variety there is now in marketing, and also the importance now of data, which you just mentioned. How much have you seen clients kind of start saying, okay, well, can you show us, not proof, but can you show us something that we can look at and go, okay, it is working? Because I think marketing back in the day, there was a famous quote or something that somebody said, I know I'm wasting 50% of my marketing budget. I just don't know which 50%. But now with the advent of data, you can kind of show things to clients, right?
Yeah, attribution. That's the big
Yes.
word that we constantly. I probably have it numerous times a day, and I think it's a fair point. I always look at it and think you've got sort of quantitative information and qualitative information, and some of it you can put a number to, and some of it you can feel, and that goes back to that 50% piece. And I think all I would say on that point is that there are a huge variety of disciplines and channels coming together. The future of marketing from my perspective is that blend, that perfect blend of digital and physical, and utilizing your budget in a way that has a seamless experience for a consumer that doesn't pester them. It's not intrusive, it's timely, it's relevant. And from my perspective, I think that from an attribution perspective, I think it's come a long way. The data that's available now to even physical marketing, it allows us to get a window of how people interact with marketing, and it's very difficult to put attribution in one pot. To try and say that was specifically the only thing that made that person make a purchase. I think there's also a saying around different industries see different numbers of contacts with a consumer before they make a purchase. It might be 6 or 7 touch points before they reach a decision, and that varies. Obviously, it's an average, but I think the way to look at marketing is you need to use a blend. And I think from my perspective, we've come from an industry where back when I first started the company, where we would sell one thing, right, and we've had to diversify. And the more agnostic we've become, the better the conversation we've had with clients. And the reason for that is because as soon as you start leaning on one discipline, yes, you can become a specialist, but actually marketing tends to work better when you combine it. It tends to prime different channels. So for example, if you're doing a TV advert, if you land a door drop around the same time, it actually boosts the response of both. So it's kind of, rather than look at it in isolation and say, we're spending all our money on TV, you can make that work harder. And the same conversation I have with online as well. You probably had it if you're a digital marketeer. They'll tend to only talk digital, but they don't realize that maybe we've got evidence to suggest that if you combine it with a few other channels, we can actually drive more people online, which makes digital look really good. So I think it's really interesting. And I think maybe to make another point here, I mean, one thing I've seen is that people tend to turn things off quite quickly. And obviously they make a decision and turn it off, and then tend to come back to it 2 years later and wonder why the performance dropped elsewhere. I noticed it particularly with charity. There is an issue with cost with attribution. You want to make sure you get return on investment. And so someone sometimes wants to mix things up and they turn something off, and that can have a massive effect elsewhere. And then you're soon scrambling to sort of reignite something. So for me, I like to think that you you look at it like dials, right? And you want to get the right mixture, a bit like if you were looking at a soundboard maybe, and you're trying to get the treble and the bass in the right, mixture for listening to music. I look at marketing the same way, and I think it's good to get a good balance across the whole mix.
So somebody listening to this that wants to go into marketing, it's quite bewildering, I guess, because there's so many different avenues they can go down. Where, from your point of view, should somebody start out? Where's the best place to start with this whole career?
Yeah, I mean, there's several ways actually. I think there is an underused route, which is the apprenticeship, work experience, and getting on the radar quite early route, which is kind of not too dissimilar to what I did really. Um, at the moment, it's a really good time to utilise government grants and apprenticeship schemes, traineeships as well, and a lot of companies will be looking for fresh talent that understands, a more digitally native talent, and that tends to be from the education that's coming out of people coming out of school and college at the moment. So I think there's a great route down there. It gets you in with some experience on your CV, and also it allows a company to get a feel for the type of work that you can support them with. Um, that exposure is great, and obviously would, I think, lead to whether it's the right industry for you. Maybe it's not the right brand. I think trying to get that right. I've been extremely fortunate. I'm quite happy with the company that I landed with. But I think for a marketeer to experience, 2 or 3 brands quite early on means that they get to see a flavour of different skill sets and different approaches to marketing quite early. I think the second route is obviously if you go through university, that isn't to say that you can't get a degree and move into marketing. And one of the points I think that probably comes up a lot is I would say that there's a lot of research to show that marketing, not a huge amount of people have a qualification in marketing.
Mm.
And that doesn't mean to say they don't go on and learn it on the job or get further education later in their career, or experience through doing it. But you tend to see a lot of people that have, a degree in maybe geography or history or English or various other degrees that end up falling in love with marketing for creative reasons, or they're drawn to the brand or the excitement that comes with some of the benefits of marketing. And so I would say you do have an advantage coming out of university with a marketing degree. A lot of people go back and retrofit it later on in their career. And I would heavily advise it as well, because I think a lot of people learn to do their job and they don't get that further education. And that leads to the that attribution question again of understanding what method to use, which tool in the toolbox to use at what time. So so I'm a big advocate for people getting a formal qualification, but I think you can bring new skills to the industry because it is so varied.
Mm. So loads of our guests that we've had on have talked about the accessibility the internet and social media is giving people when applying for jobs. So we've had people on that just loved history, right? And they created YouTube videos and they did sort of volunteering for different historical companies and whatnot. And they showcase this as content on their social media, and it's landed them jobs, and not just in history, in loads of different subjects. Is that something that would appeal to you if a candidate came in and said, hey, look, I've done all this stuff within marketing, I've built a social media presence on LinkedIn or Instagram or something like that?
Absolutely. The beauty of that is that you're demonstrating skills that an employer is quite clearly going to want to explore as well. And I think that, yeah, certainly things like social media is a great way to be able to demonstrate a professional portfolio to an extent. You might be able to bring some new ideas in. And so I think there is an element of showcasing how you see that you could take their marketing. I mean, obviously, yes, of course, if you're applying for a social media job and you could say, look, I've managed to create this. This is the style that I did. This is where what it used to look like. This is what I've done with it. That transition, an employer is going to take that into consideration. In my opinion, they're going to look at that and think, great, that's you can demonstrate that you can bring that to us. Also, if people look at the maybe go and look at the company and say, hey, look, I noticed you did this on maybe your social media, or maybe we noticed this on your website. We noticed you were at this event, and I had this thought, and maybe I noticed another company was doing it this way. Maybe that was this is a good way that you could do it, or I've had a look at ways that maybe I could take your social media or your website from here to here, and I think that would give an edge. I'm sure. Certainly I would appreciate that.
And what do you look for on a CV when somebody's applying for a job? I know it's kind of an unfair question in marketing because like you say, there are so many different aspects to marketing and different jobs within it. But what are some things that you look at CV and go, oh yeah, I'd love to get this person in?
Yeah, I mean, several things. I mean, maybe I'm slightly biased to the company that we've got at the moment. I would be looking for some level of commitment to a role for a certain period of time, just because I know marketing people move around quite often. And if you've got a mutual commitment both ways for, it doesn't have to be thousands of years, but a good few years in a job shows that you've had time to experience the cycles and the seasons within that job. Marketing is extremely seasonal. Your typical retail periods are, you've got your Easters and your Christmases and things like that. So for someone to experience those highs and lows throughout a job, that's quite important. I would say if someone's been able to demonstrate taking something from A to B, whether they can measure that and whether they can show the before and after of kind of I was given this challenge. So for argument's sake, we didn't have a particularly good CRM or data product, and we've been able to take it from A to B, and now it's working really well, and it's doing this, and it's acquired 100,000 people within this database. That's good evidence that we're looking for, is someone that's able to apply their skills, not just the education, but to be able to take a project, because marketing is quite project led. So again, project management skills is probably the third thing I would be looking for, is someone that's capable of a level of independence and collaboration, but across a project. And you're not expecting everyone to work in silos, but sometimes you're having to work on stuff where you're responsible to take it from start to finish. But a lot of marketing requires you to talk to other teams. If you're doing a marketing campaign, you could be talking to sales about the price point, you could be talking to graphic designers about the design, you could be talking to the data team about who you're going to target. You could be talking to the supplier about how they're going to get the campaign moving. So you're looking for someone that can get along with a lot of people and to collaborate with a lot of people, but work independently to get that project from start to finish.
I guess that leads really nicely into personality traits really for the career. What's something that you see in yourselves that's helped you to progress to where you are, and other qualities that you think are really sort of necessary within marketing?
Yeah, so I think I kind of touched on some of them before. I mean, obviously, from a personality perspective, marketing, I would say, has a bit of a mixture of both, to be honest. There are maybe some more quieter, creative, detail-orientated people that tend to find themselves in certain roles related to maybe data and maybe creative. Then you have sort of maybe if you're in event marketing, or maybe you're in a more sales-led environment for marketing, you would have more extroverted, more people that are more comfortable and confident presenting, or it might be leading a photo shoot, for example, or it might be presenting their ideas to the business. So I think it is pretty diverse in terms of the personality traits. It isn't like a one size fits all. And I would say strengths wise, I mean, I always look at the psychometric profiles. So you kind of looking at different roles suit different psychometric profiles better than others. So the creative, more creative psychometric profiles would be people that can deliver to a certain level of attention to detail. So attention to detail, I would say, in marketing is paramount, especially as let's face it, marketing is hugely related to communications, and they are mass communications. Whether you like it or not, social media is broadcast. Once it's on the internet, it's broadcast. So the same applies to TV, the same applies to radio. If your advert goes wrong, then clearly, you need to be quite resilient. But that's why the attention to detail, I would say, is a strong trait to see in somebody, in that sense. And then I guess the other thing as well is having a level of fresh ideas and fresh approaches. Being able to apply yourself to a creative problem or opportunity, and to just not accept that the first answer is the right answer. You need to come up with stuff that's on the fringe, but know when you're crossing a line, because that's also where you can get quite bad publicity. So yeah, hopefully that.
Yeah. The interview process in marketing can be quite interesting, because some agencies have tasks you need to do, creative tasks or written tasks. How should you approach the interview if you're going into the marketing kind of world? Should you prepare something or have ideas ready?
Yeah, it depends on the agency, really, I suppose, and or the brand. I mean, I would say it would give you an advantage to do some preparation. Marketing features a level of research, which I haven't mentioned. There's a huge amount of research that goes into not just numbers, but actual, how people feel about brands. Whether the price point's the right price point, what competitors are doing. So I think, going in armed with a level of, you're almost sort of suggesting that you have prior experience by saying, look, I've looked at what's happening in your industry. I've looked at the trends. I've looked at the competitors. SWOT analysis and PESTLE and things like that, they tend to crop up quite often in, typical marketing training and things. So I think, if you're able to do a very basic level of preparation to say, I know who your key competitors are. I've seen some of the good things that they're doing. I see where your strengths are. I see where there's some weaknesses maybe we can work on together. I think you'd find that would give you an advantage.
And for you, what would be one of the biggest positives or opportunities that you've had from the industry?
I think the biggest thing is it's been extremely mentally stimulating. I have dealt with such a variety of campaigns, clients, and people, and it's never been boring. And I'm here like 15 years working for the same company, which I think is pretty rare these days to say I'm a lifer at a company, right? It's obviously done me really great from a progression perspective, but I've worked with some people, even the same people that have moved between jobs, and the variety that I still get working with them is incredible. And I've been involved in some really exciting video game launches. I've been excited. I've been to all sorts of events and award ceremonies. It's given me a huge amount of variety in my life. I've met founders of companies that have come up with products that you see in store, and it really brings it to life when you build a campaign and then you go into a shop and you see it, or you're online and you see your advert. So I think, from my perspective, there's a great deal of satisfaction, and it's really exciting. And I think that's the thing that you can tell. Obviously, anyone over a beer would say, "Oh, what do you do?" And you say, "Oh, have you seen this?" And they go, "Oh, yeah, I know that company." So it's really cool. And I think, especially if you've got hobbies as well, because you can tend to kind of lean towards the hobbies and find brands that really tick, stuff that you're interested in. You get to be closer to those businesses and see the other side of them.
And on the flip side of that, what's something that's kind of less favorable about the industry?
Oh, blimey. I think it's getting used to change and adapting. You can't stand still. It's a very, very fast-moving industry. And you have to be extremely agile. If you think of the events over the last, during COVID, the entire industry flipped upside down, and I know that I appreciate that obviously happened in many other industries as well, but within marketing, you have to move fast, and people just didn't know how to communicate with people, because is it insensitive? Do we all use the same line of, in these troubling times and all this kind of stuff? So it's kind of, it's just interesting. I think it's extremely difficult to relax in marketing. It's such a fast moving industry. It can be quite long hours sometimes, and it can be other times where you've got the glory of kind of, having some some great times with customers at a launch party, for example. So I think there is that side of it, but
Yeah.
also, there are the days where you spent 3 months working on Christmas before anyone's speaking about Christmas, and so when Christmas comes, Christmas is ruined. The last thing you want to see is Christmas. So I think there is a few things like that, and you do tend to see advertising slightly differently. You kind of, when you see someone trying to sell a product to you, you overanalyze it a little bit too much, and you kind of think, oh, I know what you're doing there.
So for you, you've mentioned professional development is an ongoing thing. How do you approach that? I mean, I'm a little bit of I kind of find marketing really interesting, basically, on the side, and I read a lot of marketing books, and that interests me. But do you keep up with the trends and what's going on through reading books or watching videos? How are you keeping up with the changes?
Yeah, so I think through my career, I've had, so I basically was supported by my company, and I think that's a big thing for marketeers to do, is to go and ask for development, right? And I think that's a really important way to get progression. If you want pay rises, if you want more responsibility, then I would ask what you need to learn, or pick the specialism that you're working on and double down on, getting some depth there. So I went and did a working degree at the same time. I did leadership and management, which covered some marketing in there as well. And so that kind of built on my marketing experience, but also gave me the leadership and management experience that I needed to then turn around, 3 years later and say, okay, so I've got my marketing experience. Now I've got the leadership and management experience. I want to be able to influence at a higher level within marketing. So I did that. It was part sponsored by the government and part sponsored by our industry body and my company as well. So obviously that was greatly appreciated by me, no student debt, and I was able to get a degree. However, I was having to finish a day's work and write about work and spend my evening about work. So it wasn't for everybody, but it was a way to get higher education. I would say how I currently do it is a mixture. I have a lot of interest in audio podcasts, audio books. I tend to try and get through kind of one every so many months. I don't put a huge amount of pressure on myself, and I don't suggest getting up at, they say high performers get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do 8 laps of the block and read 7 books. But I would say, I've managed to do the same thing, but, I learn on the job through, variety of industry events. That's usually pretty good, but I listen to them. I always ask for the recording because I can schedule it around my day.
Yeah.
I like audio podcasts. I would say also mentorship as well, and asking questions of people that you respect and asking if you can get half an hour of their time. That's quite good. And over that coffee, you can kind of say, well, what's working for you and what's your challenges and things like that. So that's helped as well. But yeah, I would thoroughly recommend if you're in marketing, looking to get qualifications within a marketing environment, and there are a huge amount out there. Especially there's a huge amount of subsidies and grants at the moment, and they don't cost as much as you think to get that.
And so at this point, we usually talk about salary expectations, and we had a little chat kind of off air about, it's kind of so hard to nail down a salary, really, an average salary in marketing, because there's so many different aspects to it.
Yeah.
But if we go for a general across the board average kind of starting salary within marketing, and again, this will vary if you're in the city or in a town, but average around 18,000 to 22,000 is a kind of starting salary in marketing. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I had in my head before you said that probably 18 to 23, and that is obviously depending on experience, depending on the brand, depending on the geography as well, and obviously what you can bring to the table. If a business has a certain need, then they would, I'm sure, pay a little more for the right talent coming in. And equally, I think businesses would tend to pay a bit more if they can get the right person that's going to stay. And I think that's quite important. If it's a temporary requirement, and I say temporary meaning you're trialing something new, then of course they're going to lower the risk, right? So, if it's fair to say at this stage, I'm dead against free internships. I mean, obviously, work experience is a totally different thing, but I have seen some people that encourage, come and do all our social media, and you can put us on your CV. And I just feel like, off the back of that, I'm sure there's many sales, and it's just a bit unfair, in my opinion, is a bad practice. But so I would recommend avoiding that. And if you can get paid experience, or government subsidies for people to take you on as an apprentice, that's probably the route to go for that kind of 18 mark upwards.
Sure. So at this point, we talk about something that's not usually in the job description, but you have to deal with on a daily basis. What would that be for you?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think probably presenting, and it's very, very difficult because you're expected to do it, and no one really ever tells you how to do it, or gives you any really decent practice of it, or it's a very niche and expensive coaching and training thing that you have to do. If you want to be really good at owning a room, you've got to really find the right person that fits your kind of style, because you don't have to be an extrovert to present. It's required of everybody, whether it's presenting your own piece of work. I've got software developers that have to present me their code that they've worked on, to explain how it works, right? And so they're not maybe the right person to be presenting on in front of 500 people on stage, but certainly you're going to require it in your job. And I think within marketing, you have to be confident presenting your own ideas. And so I would say a skill that is widely forgotten but helps you progress in your career is presenting. And that could be presenting your own ideas, presenting to a management team, or presenting as part of a management team, or even showcasing what you've managed to achieve to agencies, partners, clients at an event. And that's how you get recognized. That's what drives new business, and also drives your career forward as well. So I would say that's an underutilized skill.
And to wrap up, would you still go into this industry knowing everything you know now?
100%. Yeah. I think when I was a kid, I wanted to be a pilot. I was, I think, probably too blind, partially, with my eyesight. And I would say that, with the grades that I got and the mixture of topics that I picked, marketing's worked out perfectly, because actually I think I needed a creative role. So 100%, I would absolutely recommend it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been really cool to hear about your kind of story from apprentice up to MD, and I think it's very inspiring.
That's great. Thanks, Daniel. Really appreciate it.
And where can anyone find you, or on LinkedIn or social media, and the company you work for?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm Richard Boone at Webmart, and I'm also on Instagram as Webmart Richard. And you can find us at www.webmartuk.com.
Brilliant. Thanks for coming on, Richard.
That's great. Cheers, Daniel. Bye.